Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 54 of the Lord Ninja Choke MMA Picks podcast. As always, I am Will, and I'm joined by Josh in Australia and Dom, who is currently traveling around Europe, but usually from the US. And today we're going to be breaking down the UFC Seattle card, which is headlined by Israel Adesanya, who returns after a relatively long layoff, taking on Joe Pyfer, who finally gets his first main event, I believe it is. Lots been said back and forth about this card, whether or not it's exciting or not exciting. I initially, right off the bat, said it was going to be better than UFC London, and then looked at the card afterwards and realized that might have been a bit of a wild statement to make. So I've been dialing back my apologies on that one. But yeah, did any of the fights on this card stand out to you aside from the three that we're going to talk about in a bit more detail? Josh, I guess we'll go with you first. Anything you like?
Yeah, there are five that stand out to me, but only for bad reasons. Navajo Sterling is fighting, which is usually a good thing, right? We like a good city kick kickboxing fighter to fight and all that stuff. But he is a point fighter. We don't want to see point fighting anymore. Screw that guy. Tabura is facing off against Tyrell Fortune, a guy that has a KO against a 52-year-old fighter just 6 months ago. And to win against the 50-plus-year-old is just embarrassing. Like, that's just a given, right? Musayev is taking on Bahamondes, who is coming in on somewhat short notice, replacing a Contender Series debutant whose name is Samuel Sanchez. So Musayev is definitely taking on a wolf in this fight. It's a unfair opponent change for him, I reckon, but that's all right. That's what it is. Larian Douglas is a guy that is on my radar for a good reason. He is an LFA prospect. His wins over against Javier Reyes is what got him on my radar, I should say. And he is a pretty sharp one to keep an eye on. Like, his raised guard, his intelligence, his boxing, his kicks to the abdomen when he throws them. He is one of the more highly touted prospects to come from LFA, in my opinion. So I'm pretty intrigued in seeing him fight. And Nico Price, he is coming back to fight against Michael Chiesa. So on the screen you see Carlston Harris. That dude's out, and Chiesa is taking on a dude named Nico Price, who got knocked out by Nikolai Veretennikov just a month ago. So that's going to be a weird fight, but I reckon Chiesa is bound to just dominate and hopefully get a win and hopefully retire, because that dude's old. And yeah, that's my five fights that I think are going to be interesting, but mostly for bad reasons. What about you guys, Dom?
Yeah, nothing really catches my eye outside of the fights that are sort of ringed. I guess if I was forced to pick something, I think the Mansour Abdul Malik, Yusri Belgaroui might be interesting. Those guys have both prospects, so that could be an interesting fight in the middleweight division. Obviously, the main event is the middleweight division, so that's why I think that's kind of interesting to see who comes out on top there. Other than that, we've got King Casey O'Neill, who's Scottish, so sort of a home bias there, even though we're betting against her. Yeah, those are the two fights I might be interested in. Also, Bahamondes, I'd probably be interested in that fight as well. He's taking on Tofik Musayev, who's only fought once in the UFC. So Ignacio is a sort of becoming household name. And Musayev lost to Miktabek oral bias. So we don't really know what his level is, because there's no shame in losing to him, the caveman, who just took him down and subbed him pretty quickly. And yeah, shall we move on to breaking down these fights in red?
Go for it.
All right, here we go. The main event. This is one that's been, a fairly highlighted part of my UFC calendar, I suppose. Everyone loves these guys. Adesanya at this rate is a household name, although his record kind of reflects that he's going a bit downhill. I will address that soon, but I also want to address the fact that he is facing Dana White's bitch, as I call him, because I mean that highlight reel that always plays whenever Joe Pyfer fights, like BJ Pyfer or whatever, that's haunting me right now. But anyway, back to the fight. Adesanya, despite his age and his recent record being a bit of a concern, I still believe he is a masterful striker in this division. Not many people can compare to him on the feet. Not many people can really out-technique him. He may be 36, he may be on a free-fight losing streak, but he's still up there in terms of his masterful prowess when it comes to kickboxing, right? Adesanya has had ample time to recover since his KO loss against Imavov. I do believe that the short time between his DDP fight and his Imavov fight led to him not being really ready for that Imavov fight in the first place. I mean, there was only like, what, 3 months between those two fights, and you know, you can't really recover from a DDP kind of fight in that time. Like, you'll be out for a year most likely, right? DDP would just sap your whole life away. That's just how he fights. Expect to see a fairly defensive fight against Pyfer, because Pyfer has that power threat, right? He is known for that knockout power, and given that Adesanya wants to keep this fight at kickboxing range, keeping it at like teep range or jab range, he wants to just circle away from the power. And we're going to see a very boring fight, in my opinion, in which Adesanya just circles away and lands leg kicks and maybe an occasional jab to the face here and there. Basically doing what Sterling does, but better. I mean, that's the only way I can really describe how Izzy fights, pretty much. But the one issue that I kind of see Adesanya face in this fight, particularly because he's facing a power puncher, is that he will be unable to inject himself with with nothing really, inject himself into this fight. Whenever a fighter is always on the back foot and circling away, I'm gonna talk about the judges here again, because it seems to be my thing these days. I don't know what's wrong with me, but it's basically showing the judges that Pyfer is somewhat winning, because visually it's showing Pyfer is advancing and moving forward, whereas Adesanya is moving backwards and away. So I do think that due to Adesanya being unable to really showcase his offensive capabilities against Pyfer, he is going to look a bit poorly on the scorecard. So hopefully any kind of leg kick or body strike or whatever he does, any kind of point fighting attack that he utilizes against Pyfer is going to pay off in the end. Because, I mean, if it doesn't, then obviously Pyfer is going to win by decision, and it's going to be a boring 25-minute fight, and no one wants to see this, especially after this entire card, because this entire card is a whole different thing. Now Pyfer is he's a bit of a fascinating one, really. He kind of got propelled into this position, I believe, mostly through hype, but also maybe through, you know, wins, I guess. He has yet to fight anyone of Adesanya's caliber, and that's probably expected, because you cannot have a replicant of Adesanya in this division. He is a unique fighter. And so my main intrigue here for Pyfer is, how is he going to approach Adesanya? Because obviously Adesanya's got the 5-inch reach advantage. He's got the speed. He's got the kickboxing background to rely on. He's also got the growth as a fighter, right? He is older than Pyfer by a few years, or more than a few years, or probably 5 or 10. I don't know. I lost count. But what I'm trying to say here is that Adesanya has had more time to grow as a champion and as a ex-champion in this division than Pyfer has had in the short time he's had in this organization. Pyfer's 1-2 combination, the boxing combination, the jab straight, that's going to be the main thing that lands on Adesanya, and only because whenever Adesanya gets jabbed, he kind of stops moving completely. He freezes up for a second or so, and that's how he got caught by Imavov. You know, that 1-2 down the pipeline, 20 seconds into the second round. It's almost a systematic thing for Adesanya, right? He relies on his movement, so if you stop that movement by jabbing him in the face, then you can land that right hand easily. And I expect that kind of attack to land on Adesanya this weekend, but not to the same effect that Imavov had on Adesanya. It's a difference between power and accuracy, right? With that said, though, I cannot really give Pyfer too much praise here. I don't think he's anything too special. I know that he's being hyped up as this next level contender or whatever, but all the dude has is just punches, right? Like he can look tough, he can look durable, but he just hits hard, and that's probably not enough when it comes to Adesanya, right? You need to have more. And so, with that said, I do think that Pyfer is going to mix in the wrestling. And if we look at the bets that are placed, I believe we are going to see Pyfer land those takedowns early on to neutralize the striking output of Adesanya. But on the flip side, I do think, and maybe this is favoritism, maybe this is me being an Adesanya fan for the past 15 years, maybe. I mean, I've watched Adesanya grow from the kickboxing era, right? This dude's crazy good. I love him. He's he's my guy. I still think he can outpoint or outscore Pyfer. It's just going to be a grueling fight. It's going to be one of those fights that after the fight we're going to question whether or not he's done for the career, right? We're gonna wonder if he has what it takes to take on the one who has the belt, Chimaev. He doesn't in that case. I mean, crap. But yeah, I am picking Adesanya here. It's a favoritism pick, but I do want to highlight the Pyfer 2+ takedowns prop, or 3+ even. Like, any takedown prop that you can find in Pyfer, I reckon just take it, because it's his path of least resistance. And I reckon, yeah, we're in for a gruelingly long fight, and it's going to be boring, but it's going to be a necessary fight for the division. Yeah, what do you guys think? Will, do you want to go first, or Dom?
Yeah, I can wrap it up relatively short and sweet, I hope, because I mean you covered pretty much all of the talking points there. I just don't know, basically. I always find it so difficult when a fighter is at a real crossroads in their career, and the expectation that you've always had for them when they're in their prime versus the reality of what they've been doing in the last few years, with Izzy being like, what is he, 1-3 in his last 4, or 1-4 in his last 5, something like that. Like, obviously he's on a real stinker of a run. Yes, he's been fighting title contenders or champions, so fair play to him, but you can't ignore that he got knocked out by Nassourdine Imavov. You can't ignore that he got taken down multiple times by Dricus du Plessis and submitted, because those are two things that never happened to Izzy. He's an elite defensive striker and had elite takedown defense across his entire MMA UFC career, and then suddenly it doesn't exist anymore. So I don't know who he is. But what I would have known historically is that if Izzy was in his prime, he'd style on Joe Pyfer. This would look like the Paulo Costa fight, I imagine. So with this one being very close on the betting line, to me, it simply feels like a case of one of these guys is going to look like really good value when all is said and done, because I think whoever wins is going to win relatively dominantly, but I just don't know which one it is. The Pyfer side, obviously, yeah, the takedowns and the heavy power, but the thing about Pyfer is that he's fought guys that have wanted to fight him, like engage in a brawl with him, like Kelvin Gastelum. Like, he knocked him down twice, which is very impressive, because Gastelum is very durable, like one of the most durable guys we've ever seen, and Pyfer had him nearly finished twice, I think. But yeah, like Pyfer's been fighting guys who want to brawl with him, and the one time he had somebody who didn't really want to engage that much in the phone booth was Jack Hermansson, and we saw what happened there across 25 minutes. So the door's wide open for Izzy. I just don't know if he's got enough left in the tank to walk through it, basically. So I have no idea. But I hope Pyfer lands 2 takedowns, because that does sound like a really nice bet. I like the sound of that. I'll definitely be looking at the takedown numbers myself. Hopefully 2's the number. But yeah, I mean, I got nothing else to add. Dom, anything else for this one?
Yeah, I lean Israel Adesanya here. So when this fight was lined, it opened as Izzy as an underdog, and I do think Izzy as an underdog is more enticing. I got him at even money, but when I looked into it, and I agree with everything that you guys have said. Don't disagree that Israel Adesanya is declining and Pyfer has looked good of late, but also Josh mentioned Pyfer is kind of limited. I don't think he's fought anyone like Izzy, although he's got lots of tape to study on him, right? And I think Pyfer is somewhat a studious. He'll do he'll be prepared for Israel. So I like the takedown angle as well. But yeah, the main reason I like Israel Adesanya, I mean, you're right. He lost to, who did he lose to? Sean Strickland, who we know is very good. That was a 5-round decision. He was beating Dricus du Plessis, I think, pretty much in every round until he got taken down and finished. But we know DDP is a great fighter with a great gas tank. So there was that angle there. He just kept going. And Nasruddin Imavov is probably the worst, but loss in the recent streak of losses. But Imavov is a good fighter, and he's been touted as fighting for the belt, and it's not a good look getting knocked out in the second round. So I think basically the way this fight plays out is Pyfer's going to be dangerous early, and it won't surprise me if he gets takedowns. He's going to have to work back up pretty quickly and not get held down. He's done that his whole career. If he does that, and if he can weather an early storm, so do see that it being sort of Pyfer early and Izzy late, then I think Izzy will look good. I do think it's correct what you said, Will, that it's going to be a fight where one side's going to look silly. I'm just hoping that side is going to be the Pyfer better side, not the Izzy side. I feel like Izzy has a lot more to offer here as the fight goes on. I mean, he's done 5 rounds. How many times? I mean, he's I could count the number of main events here. It must be like double digits, if not. I mean, if you look at his crazy record in the UFC. I mean, he won the belt in his 6th UFC fight, and from there he had 9, 10, 11, 12. He had 12 title fights, which I guess means he's got double-digit 5-round experience. Whereas Joe Pyfer, he's gone to 5-round once and he looked awful against Jack Hermansson. It wasn't even a close fight. He lost convincingly to Jack Hermansson, who is someone that Izzy would definitely beat in all areas of MMA. So yeah, I think Joe Pyfer, dangerous early. And the problem for Joe Pyfer is that he's probably just a little bit too big for middleweight. Like he's huge, and he's going to look bigger than Izzy, and that's going to be worrying initially. So we expect, as Josh said, potentially a boring fight if Izzy's going to win this one. But I'm happy for it to be boring if Izzy wins. Personally, I'm backing him, so that's my take. And let's move on to the next fight.
And it's the co-main event, which is a rematch between Alexa Grasso and Maycee Barber. I would say this is an underwhelming co-main event, but last week we had a guy who had just his 2nd UFC fight as a co-main event, so I guess this is fair game. I mean, to be fair, there's title implications for probably the Barber side, probably not the Grasso side with a win here for either woman. So I think it has implications for the future of a division, so I guess it's worthwhile. Anyway, as I said, it is a rematch, but the most important thing to say about that one is that Maycee Barber was very, very green coming into that one. I think she was 22 years old, and I think it was her 3rd, 4th, 5th UFC fight, which, sounds like quite a lot, but considering she'd finished 3 of her first opponents and then got injured badly in the 4th fight, and she KO'd Gillian Robertson in that streak. So in my opinion, from rewatching that fight, it was very much a case of Maycee Barber really buying into her own hype, especially the hype of her striking and her power. And she was talking about how she was going to break the John Jones record of being the youngest champion in UFC history, but then unfortunately her knees got mangled against Roxanne Modafferi and it all went to shit. But she still believed in her power. So when she fought Alexa Grasso, she was swinging for the fences and missing and hitting nothing but air. I think she landed something like less than 20% of her significant strikes thrown in that fight, which is just insane. When you consider that Alexa Grasso is, not a stick and move, circle, don't get hit kind of woman. Like, she's happy to actually bite down on the mouthpiece and trade with you, which she did. And the fight very much came down to Alexa Grasso just using very basic fundamental striking in her straight shots and the occasional hook to to land strikes and not get hit in return. And she even wobbled Maycee, I think, in the second round at some point, which was quite interesting. We also saw Barber's perceived strength advantage not really mean anything in that fight, which I thought was really interesting, because even in that one, Barber, she's thick with all three of the C's when it comes to her stature for women's MMA. So a lot of the time when you see her in the cage, you think like she's like an ox compared to her opponent, and it very much looked that way, especially in that fight, because Alexa Grasso was wearing the like women's rash guard, which I always think looks really unprofessional when fighters do that. Anyway, not that matters. But yeah, no, Grasso handled herself in the clinch particularly really well, and I was impressed and surprised rewatching that one. And then the takedowns, obviously that's more of a talking point for Alexa Grasso, given how her loss to Valentina Shevchenko went. She was controlled on the mat for pretty much the whole fight, and it looked like a weakness that surprisingly we hadn't really seen that much of. So yeah, I guess the angle you would think is that Maycee Barber is going to use her takedowns and have top control here, which is pretty much what she's been doing in her recent UFC wins. I think she's on a streak of about 7 now, which is obviously quite impressive, but against a lower level of competition, really. A slightly lower level, actually. Maybe that's unfair. But anyway, yes, Grasso, when she was taken down, jiu-jitsu was looking really lethal in that fight. Very impressive. She locked in an armbar that was quite threatening and quite dangerous before the end of the round. Used the top control that she got from the armbar to lock in an arm triangle, which also looked like it was quite dangerous, which that was the end of the round. So, instantly had 2 submissions that changed together in the span of about a minute, which was very impressive. And Barber looked completely out of her depth there. But again, so long ago, who knows if Barber's really improved that much, and if that kind of angle is one you can really hone in on too much. So in short, it's a tricky one because so much has really changed for both women. Not so much in their fighting style, but more so in just their circumstances. Maycee Barber has grown a literal 6 years worth of experience in the UFC since then. She's gone from being, just past a teenager to being like a woman in her prime. So there's that. And then Alexa Grasso has obviously gone on to become a champion somehow. But I always talk about the psychology of being a champion and losing the belt. And I think, we've just talked about Israel Adesanya. The fall off that he's had since he was firmly removed from the title picture has been, one worth analyzing. And I think Alexa Grasso is one of the people that could potentially have that too. It simply comes down to when she wakes up in the morning, what drives her, what fuels her to give that extra 10% in the gym, in those sparring sessions. If she wants to take a day off, she's got a bit of a cold, she doesn't really fancy it. What's she pursuing? What's she hunting down in her career? Whereas Maycee Barber has been gunning to become a champion since she entered the UFC, and she's still on track to do it, despite the fact that she's been around for ages. Anyway, there are lots of intangibles. We could also talk about Maycee Barber and her injury / illness problems, which I can't not mention the fact that last time we broke down a Maycee Barber fight when she pulled out of a main event on 24 hours notice, Josh insanely predicted that she was going to have weight cut issues, and she did, which was still one of the most bizarre things we've mentioned on the podcast. So shout out to Josh for that one. But yeah, I digress. It's a very complicated fight. It's lined quite close. I think we could see a repeat of the first one. We could see something completely different. There's just lots of gaps, and I think Maycee Barber is a very hard woman to analyze because she's the least women's MMA fighter of the women's MMA fighters, because she possesses a lot of attributes that are a bit more reminiscent of men's MMA, i.e. power and physicality. So I find her quite hard to fight down. So all that breakdown is for me to say that I don't really know who's going to win this one. I do have a 1-unit bet on Alexa Grasso though, because going into this one quite early on, I thought that she'd be able to repeat the first fight, and I kind of held on to that opinion, and I bet her at plus 120, which, if I'm honest, terrible fumble by me, because obviously the line's now moved for her being plus 150. So I still do like that bet. I think it is one of the better underdog spots I've seen on the card, because I do think this one's going to be completely a coin toss and a competitive one. I don't see why Grasso would be underrated in this, would be not favored in this spot. I think it is a pure pick'em. So the dog side is the side I will pick, but it is not one from a confidence perspective. Yes, and now I hand over to you guys' favorite part of the show, where you have to waffle through an MMA fight, a women's MMA fight. So somebody, please take it away. Who wants to do the honors?
I'll pass it to Dom first because I think you're
Oh.
covering the last fight, and
I was going to offer you the pleasure or the displeasure.
I mean, I could take it if you want me to, but all right, I'll do it. Look, Barber, as Will said, is a physical fighter. She tends to grind her opponents up against the cage. She tends to body lock them and get takedowns. She's a very much a weight bully. Like, I reckon whenever she weighs in, like during the fight day, she's got maybe a 10-pound advantage over her opponents. Maybe, like I feel like that. If she was a dude, it would make sense. But that aside, I do believe that Grasso has a slight advantage here on the feet. I think that if Grasso, and excuse my whole thing about Adesanya again, but if she employs the Adesanya game plan of like circling away from the cage, staying away from any wrestling exchanges, and just punch her in the face as she, advances towards Grasso, then I reckon there's potential for Grasso to, get a win here, because I don't think Grasso is a very good fighter. I know that sounds controversial because she was a champion, but like, if you look at her rise to the occasion to fight like to fight Shevchenko for that belt, it was a very rushed kind of like development, right? Like, we saw her fight decent fighters, but nothing really great that should give her a title fight. And so I feel like her holding the belt was maybe like a blip on the radar for like her achievements, but as we saw with the next two fights against Shevchenko, she kind of shat the bed and laughed about it. So I feel like that Grasso is the kind of fighter to kind of melt if Barber was to employ that heavy takedown pressure style, because obviously that's where Grasso lacks. I mean, like, if Shevchenko, out of all people, could take Grasso down 12 times over their two fights or their two rematches, then obviously Barber can do that too, in my opinion. Barber's got the strength, she's got the physicality, she's got the machoism, I guess, if you want to call it that. She's got the balls for it, really. But I think that this is a Barber fight. I applaud the Grasso money line bet there. I mean, there's potential there, but I personally think that Barber's gonna butcher her. Yeah, Dom.
Well, no, I mean, I respect your opinion, but I tend to sort of lean more with Grasso just from a value perspective. Yeah, I mean, I agree in the sense that I think Barber probably should be the favorite. She's on the 8 fight win streaks, whatever it is, and Grasso's, on a skid. But for me, the reason I like the Grasso money line bet here is it's a buy low spot for her, right? She's coming off 3 losses, is it? Yeah, she's coming off 3 losses, whereas Maycee's on 7 fight win streak. Yet, why are the odds this close, right? It's because the bookmakers know that, obviously they had the first fight, which Maycee lost. But I think we don't need to look too closely into the first fight because, Maycee was, I think, 22 years old. They both had a bit of time to develop, or more so on the Maycee side, which is why I think she should be a favorite. But I think this fight is close. So if we take the losses from the Grasso side first, losing to Shevchenko, the best to ever do it, in my opinion, in the best female mixed martial artist of all time. Having 2 close fights with her, it wasn't like she didn't. I mean, the second fight wasn't close, but the first 2 fights were close, right? I don't really know what happened in the third fight. I think Grasso just didn't turn up at all, so she got dominated, taken down. It's kind of a boring fight, actually. But on the feet, Grasso was hurting Valentina Shevchenko, and when I rewatched the draw, I did forget that Val did get hurt. Sorry, it might have been the first fight that Alexa won. She got hurt on the feet, so she got wobbled by Grasso's boxing. So even though Grasso is, I'd agree, less physical than Barber, who is more sort of manly with the power. Yeah, I think that Grasso can definitely hurt Barber if this is in boxing range. I think Barber's going to grapple, right? That's the game plan. The game plan will be Barber take Grasso down. Like that's going to be how Maycee can win this, and we saw that in Maycee's last fight where she was facing Karine Silva, and she neutralized her on the ground, right? Even though Karina Silva wanted it on the mat. You know, and I think that if we look at the Maycee wins, none of them really stand out to me and go, you know, this is a girl who's better than Grasso. Caitlin Sermonara, Karine Silva, Amanda Hebas, Andrea Lee, Jessica Ai, Montana De La Rosa, Miranda Maverick. None of them are going to beat Grasso, not clearly anyway. So this is a close fight, and in a close fight, in a 3-round decision, in women's MMA, you know, not to be reductionist, of course I want to be on the dog money. And, you know, a lot of money's coming in right now on Maycee, so she's a growing favorite. If you got Maycee close as even money, I'd say, okay, well, I get it. Like, if there's something you really like about her game, you know, health issues notwithstanding, because that's something you always have to factor in, right? There's the other aspects that this fight might just get cancelled. You know, I know it was very, you know, Josh had the premonition, as we mentioned, of the health problem, but that wasn't a one-off. Like, she had recurrent health issues, and Josh pointed that out, and that they could still be there in the background for all we know, affecting her training, affecting her prep. So I just think it's hard for me to see why you'd bet on Maycee Barber at all, knowing that she has, you know, something like Lyme's disease. I don't know what the exact issue is, but something's affecting her systemically. It's always a concern for me, betting on a fighter with a sort of ongoing health issue. She says she's, you know, fine and in the clear, but I remember when she revealed something about her health condition that it sounded like it was something that she was going to have to manage for the rest of her career. Many fighters do, so it's just something to be wary of, not something to just put you off completely, because I think there have been other fighters who've had long-term health issues, like, you know, like gut issues, like, I can't remember who it was. GSP famously, he had some sort of Crohn's or colitis or something like that that he managed and still manages to this day. So yeah, I think if you're getting nearly plus 170 now on Alexa Grasso, I think that's pretty tempting. So yeah, I like the money line bet here. And I'll stop talking about this fight and go into the final fight that we're going to break down. Yeah, so this fight, Ricky Simone against Adrian Yanez, is going to be a banger. That's the People's Main Event. I had the pleasure of breaking down the People's Main Event last card in London. That was Mason Jones against Axel Soler, which was an absolute war. Probably the best fight on that card that wasn't a finish. That was a decision fight. And this one, I think, is equally has the potential to be a real banger. Having said that, not both fighters fight in that style, so that's the caveat here. Ricky Simone has got a lot of finishes in the UFC, just not recently. So he's been going to decision in his recent fights. And Adrian Yanez is a walk forward. You know, he's a pressure forward fighter. And so I think this could be exciting, because whilst Ricky Simone has been going to decision, he's also a walk forward, pressure forward fighter, but he likes to mix in the grappling. So therein lies the sort of, you know, where we might get a bit of stifling is on the Ricky Simone side. So start with Ricky Simone and talk about him for a little bit. Let me bring up sort of the things I like about Ricky Simone. He's known for his grappling, his power, his explosivity. He's got the fast twitch muscles. He's very well muscled for this weight class. And yeah, you see on the screen here, there's not a big difference in height or reach. So these guys are similar in size. Ricky Simone is going to be the sort of bigger fighter in terms of body mass, I think. What do I dislike about Ricky? So I think this calls into question his sort of these negatives here on screen, his record recently. So in his last 6 fights, he has 4 losses, of which, you know, 3 of the losses were decision losses, and the only person who finished him was Song Yadong. So he's tough. He's a tough SOB. So he lost to Song Yadong, then he lost to Mario Bautista. There's no shame in either of those. Those are 2 top bantamweights. He lost to Vicinius Oliveira. Again, no shame in that, because he's basically, you know, on a fast track to the title now. If he can recover from his last loss to Bautista, I think he's, you know, one of the ones to watch in the division. And I think that's really where the concerns for Ricky Simone started when he fought Vicinius Oliveira. I bet on Ricky there, thinking that, you know, he was going to bring back his takedown heavy style, and he did try to take down Vicinius, but just couldn't get him down. And the threat on the feet was just overwhelming. Now, Vicinius Oliveira is a much bigger bantamweight than Yanez, so we can't read too much into that. Then it seemed like Ricky was back. He one-shotted Javid Basra, who at the time I believe was undefeated, so knocked him out in the first round. you know, I don't want to say it's a lucky punch, but it was against the sort of expectations for the fight. They didn't really get into it. It was over before it started, right? It was just the first round, and yeah, so that was a great win for Ricky. It was like he was back, and then he fought Cameron Smotherman, who is again a dangerous stand-up artist. He just took him down and he smothered Smotherman, and he won that fight convincingly. Well, I wouldn't say convincingly; it was just comfortable. So he didn't really entertain too much back and forth on the feet. And then his last fight, he looked a little bit off in the fight against Raoni Barcelos. I watched that last night. He won the first round, but it was a very close first round, and then he just seemed to take his foot off the gas for rounds 2 and 3, and he let Barcelos take over. Now, Barcelos is a very experienced fighter, has great fight IQ, despite the fact that he's probably one of the oldest, I think, bantamweights fighting at the upper echelons of that division. So that brings us, you know, full circle to Yanez, and Yanez is a similarly frustrating fighter to Ricky Simón in that once upon a time he was a prospect in this division. I should have mentioned that both these men are now over 30, with Ricky pushing 34 and Yanez 31. And, you know, Yanez started his career in the UFC with a 6-fight win streak with, you know, some impressive names, but not really. He beat Davy Grant, he beat Randy Costa. I don't know if you can really call those impressive. I think Davy Grant is a good win, but that was a split decision. And the minute he was fed fighters who were, you know, at the upper echelons of the bantamweight division, he really struggled. So he lost to Rob Font, he lost to Adrian, Jonathan Martinez. He beat Vicinius Salvador, who's actually a flyweight stepping up. So we can't really read into that. So the only fight here really that I can look into and go, well, who is like a top fighter that he's had a close fight with, because the Font fight and the Martinez fight were both finishers. And the Martinez one was leg kicks, which is a little bit worrying, although I don't think Ricky Simón really throws leg kicks. Daniel Marcos, who has been on a tear in the bantamweight division. Daniel Marcos was basically undefeated in the bantamweight division, like 17 or 18-0. He's only lost to Montel Jackson, who obviously had the sort of grappling advantage against him. And the fight was very close. And I rewatched the fight with Daniel Marcos. Yanez did drop the first round. He won the second round, and then the third round was very close. And the worrying thing about the third round was that Daniel Marcos landed 2 takedowns on Yanez, and there was some control time there. And really, that's, I think, the story of this fight. It's, can Ricky Simón get Yanez down? Because Yanez is going to be winning the stand-up. He's going to be much faster. He's going to put out a lot more volume. He's got great combos to the head, to the body. I love his hooks to the body. He doesn't really move his head, but as I said, like Ricky doesn't. Ricky's more of a grappler. He's not. He hits hard, so I think there's finishing potential in this fight, but I really think it's going to come from the Adrian Yanez side. And Yanez isn't a grappler. He wants the fight to be standing. He has sort of somewhat decent takedown defense and grappling defense, but he's never fought anyone as good as Ricky Simón in that department. And Yanez doesn't kick enough, so that's another issue I think that he might find, because Ricky Simón will be able to get close to him, you know, get to the hips, get to the legs, and so it's just going to be one of those, I think, fairly greasy fights. It's probably, if it goes to decision, it's going to be control versus damage. And given the way that the criteria has been, you know, set out and should be changing, I like Yanez here. I think if you're more risk averse, I think a really good bet actually is Yanez decision, no action. Of course, they've priced that as Yanez to be a favorite here. So if someone's going to get the finish, it's more likely to be Yanez. But if you get like a -150 line here, I think that's going to be a great bet. So yeah, in summary, I think it's likely going to decision, probably a 29-28 on the Simón side. But as we spoke about, you know, in these situations, you know, I think if you can get a decent dog ticket, I think there's a good chance Yanez could finish Simón, who's looked a bit off recently. So yeah, I'll hand over to Will. What's your take on this one?
I hate to make it 3 in a row, but I don't have a super strong opinion on this one either. I do think right off the bat, though, that playing the Yanez decision no action bet has to be the like objectively the best bet on this fight, just because Simón is very decision orientated when he doesn't have a significant striking advantage, and he's not going to be, I don't think he'll be comfortable enough to be throwing the heat that he has when he's had knockouts recently or in his career. So yeah, I do think Yanez is very much going to be the finisher if there is a finish. But when I was flying through my research on this one, I have to admit it was the last one that I broke down. So I was a little bit behind schedule as well. I just didn't have it in me after a very busy weekend at UFC London. So I kind of skimmed over it. But at the end of the day, this is a binary kind of fight in that Simone is going to need to wrestle and grapple if we can have any confidence he's going to win, and Yanez needs to keep it standing if we're going to have any confidence that he's going to win. Yanez has had 11 fights now in the UFC, I think I wrote down, and only been taken down by one opponent, and that was Daniel Marcos last time. So I think it may not be 11 opponents. There's 11 takedown attempts. That was it. I went through all of his fights, and I think he's only had 11 attempts on him from a takedown perspective, and only 2 were successful. But when it's just a sample size of one person grappling him, I never really like to take too much from that, because Yanez could have just been having an off night. He could have the best takedown defense in the world, and that was just the day that it all fell apart. Marcos had 2.5 minutes of top control with those 2 takedowns. That's positive if you like the Ricky Simone side, but again, such a small sample size, it's kind of, it seems a bit crazy to take that and really run with it as a very serious point to build the base around a bet. So yeah, I'm very much on the fence here, but yeah, just seeing that Yanez decision, no action bet being highlighted, that's absolutely the angle I would want to take. So I will be looking at what odds I can get for that one. I might play it myself if they're generous. But because it seems so obvious, I assume the books will be on top of it and won't offer anything decent. But yeah, when you have an option like that, why think too hard about anything else would be my conclusion on the matter. Josh, how about you? You got anything for this one?
I did, until you mentioned that Yanez had those takedown attempts on him. You said 11 takedown attempts. So that was part of what I was going to say. You took my spotlight. Thank you. I'm kidding, but I do want to still focus on that though, because obviously when it comes to Simone, he is one to take down his opponents, or at least try to take down his opponents more than 10 times. He's had 10 attempts on Smotherman, 11 attempts on Oliveira, 13 on Bautista. You can just add those numbers up for his whole career. That's how many takedowns per fight Simone averages, most of the time, right? My whole prediction here was always based on Simone getting those takedowns, and even if you take into account Yanez defending those takedowns, how much of that volume of takedowns from Simone is going to bust up Yanez's punching power, right? Because obviously when you counter wrestle, you use a lot of arm strength or arm muscle to try and power out of these positions. And so how much of the wrestling defense from Yanez is going to further detriment his ability to box up Simone? I kind of want to read off what Dom has here regarding his notes here. You got fast hands, volume, and nice combos from Yanez. But to me, and I don't want to disagree completely with Dom here, but I am a prick. I do want to say that whenever it comes to wrestling, all of those dot points kind of go out the gate, because whenever Simone is being the aggressor in most of his fights, his opponents tend to be defensive, right? They have a lowered guard, they have a lowered shell. They try and anticipate the takedowns from Simone before they get their own shots off. So early on, I do expect Simone to get the takedowns going. I do expect Yanez to probably be a bit frustrated. I mean, Yanez himself isn't really a perfectionist when it comes to striking, right? He often gets struck when he fights other boxers, and I do think that Simone has the ability to, box or fight well on the feet. I mean, he is a well-rounded fighter, but ultimately those takedown and that takedown threat from Simone is going to make Yanez pause and be like, fuck, what do I do? Do I block his takedown, or do I try and go for an uppercut? What do I do? So you have to really take into account the amount of volume that Simone wrestles with compared to the amount of volume that Yanez is expected to get the takedown defense going. How many takedown defenses does he have in his pocket before he gets tired? How many takedowns does Simone have in his pocket before he gets one successfully taken down or whatever, right? There's a whole lot of shit here to think about, but ultimately I do think that Simone was my lean here. Like I did the tape like a while ago, and so I figured, Yanez, he's fine, but like he hasn't really fought a guy like Simone yet. So Simone was my lean here, but yeah, again, as Will said, I like the Yanez decision no action bet there. That one's a pretty nice one. So yeah, it should be a fun fight, but I do think Simone is going to be the wrestle heavy winner.
Yeah, I mean, I completely get that, and I think some people may have been surprised when the odds opened that they weren't wider in favor of Simone. And so, yeah, I think there's one thing you picked up on there that I just respond to, which is I think the Ricky of old, the one who was like a grinder. I love Ricky Simone as well. I know you do, Josh. We've talked about him in the past. Yeah, his style would be perfect for Yanez. Just take him down, grind him out. And admittedly, he's looked worse fighting the better fights in the division, but he's just not getting fighters down in the way that he used to, or not controlling them. So yeah, I think that's the worry I have. He himself, the thing I missed out is that he himself said that he struggled with injuries. It's really affected his training, and he's had to adapt his style, which explains a lot actually about his recent performances. So if he's facing someone with absolutely no takedown defense like Cameron Smotherman, then I think he has an easy path. I think this is just a lot of unknowns here, because I think Yanez is pretty scrambly. He's not that big for the division, and he just keeps moving constantly. So he doesn't settle for bottom position. So it's going to be that control base. Like, how long can Ricky hold him down for, and how ferrety is a word we like to use on the podcast. How much of a ferret can Yanez be? But yeah, I completely get your take and appreciate it. Those are the three fights that we were going to break down. We have our bets as always here on the final slide, and I'll add details of how you can follow the guys and myself with our bets as we add them during the week, because we're recording this earlier in the week, and so there may be bets that we're going to add as the week moves on. The props come out today, so that will be interesting, as we talked about some props like the takedowns usually come out the day before, but the decision no action will be out today. And yeah, we look forward to break down the next card. It'll probably be another fight focus, won't it? Depending on, it's not a numbered card, is it, guys?
No, it's an Apex slugfest. I think it's a Chris Duncan versus Moicano or something like that.
It is.
Yep. So we're back in a week's time with a fight focus for that. We'll probably only do the early leans for the big cards, or the cards with a lot of fights that are worth going into detail on. So yeah, keep following us, like and subscribe and all that good stuff. We appreciate the support, and we're back on the next one.